Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Rachael O'Meara of RachelO'Meara.com. Rachel, it's awesome to have you on the show.
Hello, Gresh. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Super excited to have you on. And what I want to do is just read a little bit more about Rachael so you can hear about all the awesome things that she's doing. And Rachael is a transformation, leadership, and executive coach who empowers professionals to learn how to end overwhelm and thrive at work. For the past decade, Rachael's experience in sales and client services at Google has helped her have a pulse on what it takes to be successful and thriving leader, meaning steering clear of burnout, staying on missions, and feeling great as you do so. Her book, Pause, was one of the top business books for your career, and she's been featured in the NYTimes, Wall Street Journal, Harvard Business Review. One fun thing about Rachael is she's back in grad school again, getting her MA in Transformational Leadership at the Wright Graduate University in Chicago, and currently studying how to live purposefully, a fun subject. She has a lot of helpful information for CEOs, and I'm super excited to hear some of this. Rachael, are you ready to speak to the community?
Absolutely. I'm very excited to share more. Yes.
Awesome. Definitely looking forward to it. So I wanted to kick everything off to hear a little bit more about your background and what led you to get started with your business.
Yeah. So for me, I've been working at Google for over a decade now. I'm actually still there. And a few years ago, I really wasn't doing super great there. Essentially, I was overwhelmed. I felt burned out, and I asked to take a 3-month unpaid leave, and fortunately got approved. I know a lot of companies don't offer that. Only about 14% of global companies offer any kind of leave.
Wow.
And only 4% offer paid leave. So that's an interesting trend, right? So anyway, I was very fortunate. I took off those 3 months and really looked at who I was, what I wanted to do, because what I was doing, which was in client services, managing a team, it just really wasn't working for me. I was being told I wasn't meeting expectations, and it wasn't for a lack of trying, for sure. Mm-hmm. So what I realized during those 3 months was I really wasn't aligned with the role that I was in. And so I did go back to Google. I went into a role that was focused and aligned with my strengths, which were things like relationship building and networking, and that was in sales, which is where I am today. I also started my own company on the side as I began to study social and emotional learning. And this was just something I was doing on the side, but as I got into it and the years went by, a couple of years went by, I decided to attend the first part of their graduate school at Wright, which is getting a coaching certification. And I was super surprised that I liked it so much. I had no idea I would be a coach, by the way. So this is a good example of just not knowing where you're going to go, but you kind of follow a trail of instinct or what you want to do. Mm-hmm. And I was just in love with it. So I actually started coaching people on the side. I volunteered internally at my company to coach others. And so now I have a group coaching program, and I'm building it out as I go. So that's part of my business. I also am an author and a speaker. So I wrote Pause, the book that you mentioned. And that was pretty much a labor of love that I did on the side of my core role. For 5 years, I wrote that. So that wasn't like my other company at the time, but it was kind of like I knew it would become something better or something bigger sooner than later.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's funny, like a lot of times, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like there's never a time to actually that's delegated to like do that kind of discovery, to kind of understand like who you are, what your passions are. And often that changes even if you do it. So I think it's important to kind of have that opportunity to do that. It's great that Google's allowing you to do that, and you've been able to kind of start your coaching business and write your book, all those things from that.
Yeah. And it's also something that I think we have to take upon ourselves. So no one told me to look at myself. Like this was me just hitting the wall going, it can't keep going like this because I'm miserable. I feel like a failure. I don't like it. And I can't keep going like this. I felt like I was in the mental tailspin, like drained every day and exhausted. And now looking back, I realized I took that time out because I didn't have the emotional intelligence and the skills that I really needed to know that I was on that path. And if I had any of that self-awareness that I have now that I've learned since, probably would have avoided all of that together. And like 6 months before that would have changed course. And that's why I coach people on emotional intelligence, because it's basically, to me, like one of the most important skills of your own self-awareness, so that you can really be the driver in your life to know what you want and when you need stuff. Because man, if you don't know, then you're going to potentially just go right by it. And next thing you know is you're hitting that wall.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, I always say everything happens for a reason. So I feel like maybe if that didn't happen, you may not be, speaking here today about, emotional intelligence and helping
Exactly.
business owners. So I appreciate you for, talking about that, for, being able to focus on that and also to help many others to do it. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about what you're doing. What is emotional intelligence that people don't know, and what you feel kind of makes you unique as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think the thing with that word, it's like a buzzword right now, EI, EQ, emotional intelligence. It's all really a catch-all phrase for being self-aware so that you can know in the moment how you're doing, how you're feeling, and how others are around you and in the environment. But it's also in the present moment. So to me, all of that chalks up to, how am I doing in this moment, and being aware enough, no matter what's going on outside of me, whether it's a conversation or a meeting or a board meeting or anything, like I am aware enough to respond in a way that is aligned with my authentic self. And then I am a better leader for that. I feel more resilient and satisfied moment by moment, and I can direct any way I want to from there. And that's like the base of emotional intelligence. The actual science has only been around about 23 years. It came out when there was some research published, and then Daniel Goleman wrote his book, The Emotional Intelligence, in 1996. So when you think about it, it's really new. Like we didn't have this back when we were talking about like things 30 years ago in business school and stuff like that. And even now it's like very new, and the research is still coming out. So that's what I think it is. And it starts with your own self-awareness, but then you can regulate your emotions. You can be with others in a social context. That's social intelligence. You can have more empathy and feel more motivated. And all of those are really driven by that potential self-awareness that can be created. And it's a skill, by the way. Like we're not just born emotionally intelligent, although some of us might be. But if I can really develop those skills and hone them, like how am I feeling in the moment, expressing myself, having a positive outlook, all of those things can gear me up towards really optimizing my own leadership and like feeling good every day and satisfied no matter what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a huge thing. And, correct me if I'm wrong. I always feel like if you're able to understand yourself, that's usually, I don't want to say the highest level of mastery. I feel like that's a quote, but I feel like it could be, because if you understand yourself, then that helps out a lot, largely because you understand maybe if you're angry, or maybe if you are feeling burnt out, maybe you get in tuned into those things before you hit those barriers. But if you're not as in tune or know yourself, then sometimes that's when things happen.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on, Gresh. And it's funny because I mentioned I was in grad school. I just wrote a paper on this recently about will to mastery, which was Alfred Adler's motivation for why people are driven in life. Like it's one of his beliefs is that it's for your will to master, and it can be to master yourself. Like what other opportunity, what other greater challenge could there be in life, right? And by that I mean, who are you really? Like without the masks, without the things that you think can make you happy, but like, who are you? And that is a really scary question. So I think mastering yourself starts with EI, starts with knowing how you feel. It's paired with things like maybe being mindful in the moment, meaning I can know what I'm doing. But what the mastery skill there is, like, if I don't know how I'm doing, how can I be in relationship with someone else, whether it's my peer or my boss or my team, and be in relationship with them so that we have a solid mutual rapport and we trust each other. And if I'm not in that mode for myself, chances are it's probably not translating to others either.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And so you actually coach people on helping them out with understanding that, or you help them. Can you tell us a little bit more on like how exactly you help?
Yeah. So I feel like that's kind of one of the things that I help a lot of folks with is just to learn about what's going on and what they are really hungry for. It could be figuring out their next career move. It could be what their next step in business is, or like figuring out what they want. And I think a lot of people, including myself at that point when I burned out at Google, I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know who I was. I didn't even bother to look because it was super scary to have that courage and be like, hold on a second. Like, if I don't figure this out, I don't want to just keep going down this path. And I feel like a lot of people stay on that path because it's easier, or you may just feel like that's the default and they got to go that way. And who knows, unless you really explore it and be curious, it's hard to know. So what I do is help people learn how to get out of overwhelm, or even like take back their life, I would call it, like reclaim their life in a way that is for them. I think a lot of times we're on that treadmill, you know, like the hedonic treadmill, as my mentor Bob Wright says, like we're just spinning our wheels, thinking this is the way that we're supposed to be living. And the reality is, you can step off the treadmill, but you need to be in a place that feels supportive, and that you have the internal intrinsic skills to know, and the beliefs to know that you're going to be okay. And so that's what I help people with, because that's what I think coaches who are just facilitators for what people already know, but we can help harness that and bring it out in others so that you recognize it if you're in that seat of being the coachee and saying like, oh, like light bulb moment. Yeah, I can do this, or this is what I want. But sometimes it takes facilitation, and that's what I enjoy the most about coaching. And I have a coach as well. I feel like we all need coaches in our lives. And it's actually something that I think is really, really exploding in our world, especially with entrepreneurs and CEOs, because no one can do it by themselves. And it's not about fixing you. It's not about like having someone different than you, but it's about how can you emerge into the person you were meant to become. And that's why I coach others.
Nice. Well, I definitely appreciate that. And I think it was Eric Schmidt or somebody who mentioned that every CEO needs a coach and everybody should have a coach anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. He just wrote the $1 billion Coach. I don't know if you've heard about that book. Yeah. It just came out, and it's co-written. I forget who wrote it, but it's all about who mentored him at Google. Who's this? I heard him on a podcast, actually. I think it was Tim Ferriss's podcast. So that's a really good one. And so, yeah, he had a coach, but it was like, you know, because of all of his transactions, the guy had like 7-8 companies. It was like the valuation was $1 billion for his help. So
Nice.
That's how the title came about.
Nice.
But yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And like, yeah, it's a great reminder too, because a lot of times we're so close to, whether it be a business, whether it be our career, whatever it is, that it's sometimes hard to step away to understand that you can get off the treadmill, you can go left instead of right. But, you know, having people to bounce ideas off of helps out a tremendous amount. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit and ask you for what I call a CEO hack. And this might be an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but it's something that makes you more effective and efficient.
Nice. Yeah. So I think a CEO hack is going to go back to my neuroscience and emotional intelligence skills, where a lot of times we're in task mode, right? You're just doing stuff. We're checking stuff off the box. That's awesome, right? I'm all for productivity. However, if we do not choose to take little mini breaks in there, or what I would call pauses, intentional shifts in behavior, it can end up being more stressful than we would want. And our brains cannot be in that creative visionary space if we're in task mode. It's actually like a binary switch. And this is brain science. This is neuroscience of knowing there's like the task positive network, which is like I'm in task mode, checking my stuff off, like doing great stuff. And then I can change that up to be in my default mode network, my DMN, which is this visionary space and creative. So the only way to get into that, you want to take a guess?
Pause.
Pause. Right. Well, yes. And step away from the task mode, which means go up and get the glass of water. Get up and like say hello to someone who's nearby to you. Call a loved one. Connect. These are things that activate other circuitry in our brain, which is enabling positive emotional receptors in our brain. So it's imperative, because we can't just be in task mode. If we're in task mode, it's actually physiologically not possible to be creative. And so when you're just like going in task mode, which is like what I was doing when I was burning out, and not stopping to be creative and recognize, you actually will not be creative or visionary, and your day is not going to feel as good. Like you will not have the quality of life that you want. You just won't. So I study with Dr. Daniel Goleman as well. And what he recommends with Richard Boyzatis is that it's better to take 4 15-minute breaks a day than it is to take 1 hour of meditation. And that's just based on our brains and optimizing that. So my hack is do up to like 4 mini breaks a day. They don't have to be 15 minutes. They could be 5, but make sure you're building in the time and the space to be creative. And this could be on your commute. You know, you could be like singing in the car as your favorite song plays. To me, that's kind of fun and it's engaging in play. And also you are feeling creative. So that's my hack.
Nice. I definitely appreciate that hack because I think that I always have to remind myself, especially I'm sure that a lot of people that are driven as well, to pause, take a break, or just break up whatever you're doing in order for you to even be better. So sometimes when you do take that break, you do, take naps or do whatever, all these different things that you can do to break up your regular task mode, I guess you can call it, as you called it. You can definitely be even more effective and efficient, and then you get to tap into maybe ideas and creative juices that you never even know that you can tap into.
Exactly. And one of my heroes, Viktor Frankl, says it best, where he's, in the book Life's Man's Search for Meaning, and it's the quote that opens my book, is between stimulus and response there is a space, and that space is our choice to create, and we can choose to pause, and in that space lies our power to pause. It's easy. I messed up the quote there, but you get the idea. And it's our choice. Like, that's the fundamental bottom line, is you can choose something different. It just takes being conscious and jumping out of it, because it's so easy to be on autopilot.
Exactly. And sometimes that could be our comfort zone. And a lot of times, if we're not aware that we can jump off the treadmill, we can pause, we can do those things, then we're not aware that that happens, but we all have the power to do that. So thank you for that hack. And now I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO nugget. And this is a word of wisdom or a piece of advice, or if you can hop into a time machine, what would you tell your younger business self?
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So I think what I would say for the nugget is that, like my 2 cents is you always have a choice. I think I've probably said that about 10 times in our time together, but know that it's not, you don't have to be a victim. Like I think for me, I kind of fell into that role a little bit, and I can choose to be a creator instead of a victim. I can choose to be personally responsible. So if I were to jump into that time machine and tell my 20 something self, when I was like being a great achiever and checking off a lot of boxes and being awesome, you can also choose to be with yourself, being with you, to know who you can become, instead of letting the wheels of life kind of dictate that for you.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. And I think it even goes back to what you kind of talked to as far as coaching, because I think, and let me know if I'm completely off, but I feel like a lot of times you kind of know the answer, or that deep, quiet voice is telling you to go left instead of going right. But a lot of times you ignore it, or you don't think that you can actually do it. But it's great, that professions and people like you are able to kind of tap into that, to help people to understand that there is that opportunity. You just got to pay attention to it, one, and then two, just kind of follow it.
You got to create the space. To me, that's the bottom line. You've got to create the space, and it starts with the little things. It's not like a big grandiose space. It could be like just being mindful on your commute. There's no extra time needed. It could be brushing your teeth, but just allowing yourself to be more present. And that's where you can feel more fulfilled. And if we're not present, we miss those moments. We don't feel nourished. We end up burning out, and that's just not fun.
Not fun for anybody. Definitely. So now I wanted to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on this show. So Rachael, what does being a CEO mean to you?
Yeah. Wow. I could go a lot of ways with this, but I think it's being the author of your own life. And that, and as a CEO of a company, you are the author of your own life as well as the company, but don't forget yourself. Don't forget that you are the author and the creator of you, and you can choose anything you want anytime, but it takes consciousness, it takes support, and it takes being really in your authenticity, like knowing what you align with. And that's hard work. But yeah, I think to be the author of your life is also very courageous. And a lot of times we just forget that we can do that, especially if we're really busy and in that task mode, or creating something big that we think is beyond ourselves, like a humongous, awesome company, or even a small company. Don't forget yourself, because you need to be the author of your life. There's no one else to do that.
Exactly. And like you said, the word of the day is choice, and we all have a choice in order to do that. So I truly appreciate your time, appreciate all the awesome things that you're doing. For anybody that wants to follow up with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. So anyone can actually follow up with me at my website. And I have my website's rachelomera.com. You can probably just Google pause Rachael and I'll pop up there. And I have a podcast as well called The Pausecast. And it's every speaker I invite guests on who are transformational leaders or people who I think are having changes in the world that we all need to know a little more. And you can get a free gift on my site called 3 Keys to Turn Burnout into Thriving. And it's a blueprint. You can download it and start reading about how to avoid burnout. And that's at rachelomera.com.
Awesome. We'll make sure to have those links in the show notes as well so that everybody can subscribe to your podcast and find out all the awesome things you're doing. But thank you so much again for the work that you're doing and sharing your story with us. I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to be here. Thank you.